Hello, a very quick podcast on the best supplements out there to buy, which I use, coming from the Mysteries of Nutrition book series. Um, One of the most important would probably be the Transdermal Magnesium, topical magnesium, in glass bottles from Zechstein Inside brand. Otherwise, it's chemically treated, has endocrine disruptors because it's sold in plastic, and it's not actually even from the Zechstein. So that's one of the secrets of the industry is people use that word abusively. So you have to get the real stuff that has a trademark, not a self-certified seal that says Zechstein on it. If it doesn't say Zechstein Inside, it's not the real thing from the one city in Holland where this comes from. This enormous discovery, 1,000 years worth of abundance of magnesium chloride in its natural state. This can't be reproduced elsewhere. And so there's a lot of fake Zechstein sold through the port of Holland from China. So this is a different product altogether, and that makes up 95% of the market. So finding the right stuff is important for the molecular capacity of magnesium to uptake, bond, chelate, and conjugate. And so you want to do this right, as it's the biggest ubiquitous deficiency in the body and of the century, basically the number one deficiency. So that's the one most important. And you want to not just do this like every so often. You want to do it daily for about 4 months and just burn through the 2 bottles. It's only about $3 a week, so just go through it all the way through so you can get a lot of the endocrine disrupting, what do you call it, the endocrine system informational, um, what would you call that, I guess, informational system healing to happen too. You don't just do it when you just have a cramp or something. If you do it daily, then you get a little bit like endocrine medicines. There's a lot of different medicines that affect the endocrine system, and they all are 2 to 3 month kind of minimum dosage because that's how long it takes to affect that system. And magnesium can affect that system as well because it's a precursor to a lot of these catalytic conversions that create these hormones. So, and their transport and everything else. So, so that's the first one. The second one would be cod liver oil, fermented cod liver oil. There's only one brand that does fermented. It's also in glass, so just get the right one. You don't have to use it all. If you want to go through one bottle in a month and a half, you don't have to refrigerate it as long as you don't live in a heat wave or something. And so it's very powerful, and then you can refrigerate it after that month or so. But if you go through it quick enough, and so you retain really all the active principles. Refrigerators are not completely unharmful. They can harm the elements and things and the vitamins and everything else. So you want to try to maintain things as much as you can if it's possible. And usually things that have high vitamin content usually retain themselves better. I mean, the proof of that is like a lot of the oils that we buy, like sunflower oil and even some cheaper different types of, all these canola, those definitely all do, but they try to enrich these with the vitamin E because it's lost its own natural protection, or it wasn't strong enough in general, or it's been filtered out or refined out or whatever it is. So they need to add this vitamin E in there. Usually it's made from soy, but they refine it and they bring this vitamin E back into the oil to protect it. So all of these things, when they're in their natural state, there's a natural protection. So it's the same for olive oil with vanadium, which gets filtered out when they filter it. And so you don't want to filter. You want very murky, kind of non-transparent type of olive oil. Those are the best ones you'll find. And usually Italian markets will have these Greek and different imported oils. Sometimes you can find them through Tunisia and Moroccan, Middle Eastern places where you'll have this kind of oil that doesn't taste near as perfectly sweet and perfectly whatever, but it has a strong medicinal power to it. And so I would recommend these over the other stuff any day. Not only as medicine, but even with food and stuff. I mean, okay, if you can buy a separate one maybe for your favorite salad, but for other applications it works great. And or even for your salad, you could probably buy a non-filtered one from like Trader Joe's or something. But anyway, like one that's been a little bit less, intense than the Moroccan Tunisian ones. But anyway, so that's number two, and that's very important for all the fertility vitamins A, D, E, and K, and then to protect the liver from all the toxins that are happening to it all the time. So protecting the liver from toxins is the number one key. We got so much stuff coming in from the air and the waves, these 5G and 4G and Wi-Fi and cordless phones, cell phones. We got so many areas where these coagulating waves are creating tissue destruction and coagulation in the body, which the body turns into small little debris, and then this has to be filtered out. And so there's a lot of things going on there, and it's not innocent in that sense. And what we've learned about a lot of these technologies is they're turned up about 10 times their need. So they turn them up to such a high capacity, and it creates a huge health problem, whereas they could have functioned. Why at your home, when you live 50 feet away from another home, why should you have 600, or whatever, 20 Wi-Fi signals coming in, And so these things could be calibrated to where they only went the distance of the home very easily. And a lot of these technologies, from ultrasound to many other things that use EMF, they were calibrated like that before, but they turned them up. And so now they've turned everything up. Same with Wi-Fi towers, everything. They overblow the signal more than it's needed. And then on top of that, we could have just went through a fiber optic, towers off in the more isolated part of the city, and then fiber optics from there to the city type of organization. We could have done this totally differently than we did. And so we got ourselves in a lot of trouble. I mean, we'll have to go back to this fiber optic idea anyway, because it's the right way to do things in a more fundamental, as in the word fundament, like foundation. When the homes have these wiring in them, and then they work much better, and then you just have to get, all this can be sent to an isolated part of any city, and then we wouldn't be in danger. So there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. And so that would be number two. Number three would be maybe some emu oil. Before I go into that one, let me say that thing on number two. The cod liver oil could be replaced. If you want to move faster and you need healing to go even faster than cod liver oil, or sometimes at the same pace, depending on what vitamin is exactly missing. But Botarga, which is like these Phoenician, it was a medicine in Phoenicia, but they're basically fish eggs that are wrapped in wax. And these Botarga fish eggs, they're about $30 or 25 or $30 for a small, two-person kind of treat or whatever that is. But and you can eat them with bread and butter or whatever. But these things are very powerful. They contain all the same properties as a lot of the cod liver oil does. They have the same burning sensation in the throat too when you take them. And very high form of active selenium, active vitamins. They're like living fermented vitamins, like in these fish eggs. And the fermentation brings out more of the minerals and vitamins in the substance. We know this about sauerkraut and everything else. So it's the same with all forms of lactofermentation. So anyway, that would be another way to speed that up. So number three would be the emu oil. Now, me personally, I trade the emu oil for foie gras. So I order that, and the therapeutic foie gras, I call it. So it's like a medicine, and it has actually been understood as some sort of medicine by doctors in France historically. And so we're getting back to that understanding, and so the foie gras needs to be there. You can order from cans from Europe or maybe even Canada and get it in. A lot of the vitamins are not destroyed by sterilization through the canning process. Some vitamins are, certain things are, certain factors, I guess, but the main vitamins are not, and so these are still viable transport items. Now, of course, there's better ways, and if you can get the lobes and stuff from New York or from Canada or other areas, I mean, they probably use a little soy in their feed, and they're probably not as good as some of the French stuff, but they do work. I've tested that they work. And they do bring about a very strong libido mechanism, erection, things like that. Very quickly, you can sense that. You can sense it in your dog, too, if you feed them that. Now, of course, it's too expensive to feed your dog here, but when I lived in France, you could buy this stuff everywhere at the grocery store. It was just ubiquitous. So anyway, that's another way to speed it up. And so another version, the American version of that would be the emu oil, like sipping oil. So it has to be in the oil form. Don't buy capsules. I mean, I don't recommend it because it's so easy to eat this stuff that there's no need. And so take this daily, teaspoon, and it'll probably cost you $300 to go to like Radiant Life or some other place, and check out Heart of Tradition, which is our site for the magnesium, but Radiant Life for the other stuff. And it would help. Like it's $300, but it'll be worth it because it'll really get you in that. If you get 2 bottles of each of those items, the magnesium, the threefold remedy, I call this, and the emu oil and the magnesium emu oil and cod liver oil, you can really burn through a proper deficiency. You can get out of it with this much. $300 is probably the best $300 you could spend. I mean, we spend all this money on medicine and doctors and everything, and we just didn't think about this one thing. We spend so much, the whole grocery store is filled with so many items, and the things that are the most important, the milk and the eggs and the salt and the bread and, the basic meat or whatever it is, chicken, I guess you could say. All of these have been corrupted, like big time. They're all corrupted. So that's where we should have focused all of our energy. We could have had a grocery store about 1/10 of its size and had an amazing health. But the eggs we buy are all soy fed, 99% that you find on the market. The ones that are soy free are sometimes even issued from CAFO farms, and so there's a lot going on there. There's mixing of things. It's very hard to find these super bright yolk, green egg kind of, different race type of eggs, less hybridized chicken breed, soy-free, outdoors like worms. It's just hard. It's hard to find that in this world here. Whereas in France, you do still find it, and quite easily. So anyway, this has a lot to do with the soil too. So there's a lot of tricks in our books about how to, the mysteries of nutrition, about how to get around these soil deficiencies using, blood and old sacred recipes, blood puddings and different things like that. Or it sounds horrible when you say it like that, but I've made blood. They give that to children in Portugal. They mix it with chocolate. In other countries, they make it into bran muffins and sweet in Scandinavia. No, you never would know that there was blood in it at all, ever. And it totally substitutes perfectly. And so even for children, but it's just we just don't know how to use that stuff anymore. And so those things do help. And anyway, but so I would recommend those three. And then you go on down from that. The fourth would be the brewer's yeast, which is you take about 2 to 3 teaspoons a day, and it's Frontera. I think that's what Frontier. So it's the only brand that's really using kind of a natural state brewer's yeast that doesn't have any extra glutamate added to the processing or synthetic vitamins added to the process. And so there's kind of like a natural state with this, and it's very hard to find. Most all of these kind of brewer's yeast and things, they all have glutamates, and I mean everything, they all have glutamates in it naturally, but they all have an extra amount, and there's a saltiness to them. You can taste it, and there's like a thirst after eating it and stuff. So get the right stuff. It's not expensive, these things. You just have to know where they are. And so anyway, and then you can also find what would be the fifth? I mean, that one's so good. The B vitamins, the brewer's yeast, it really helps with the B vitamins and selenium and things that we're missing. And these are ways of keeping you from having to take supplements which are non-food based, all these synthetic vitamins and everything else. This is a way to keep that strong. Another medical food I would think, but I consider it as a food, would be bread. But I usually get these pumpernickel, like little square loaves at Whole Foods, and they're in a blue package, and they have a Jewish star on the side. And they look like a bunch of other square breads next to them, but they're not. The blue one is different than all the other ones, and it's because it's made differently. They don't cheat and use malt or beet or anything to make it that dark color of that rye bread. Rye bread wouldn't normally have that color, but it has that color because they do 20 hours of cooking on it. And so that's a slow cooking technique, which is traditional in Westphalia in Germany, and then they send those around the world. So these things are amazing, and this is kind of like a medicine too. I mean, it's strange to say this, but back in the day, the pharmacy and the bakery, they were similar. There was a lot of items. There's even people who say that the pharmacy came out of the bakery, and So of course you have plants and you have other things too, but there's this notion of fermentation, fermented, leavening and things like that, which were the medicine of former times and the probiotics, you could say. So something there too. Let's see if we can find a fifth supplement. I don't know if you have like some stomach problems, things, learning to use green clay. I forget, it's French green clay, Montmorillonite, I think is what it's called, and you got to order that online. And typically you can find it by itself, and typically people would never think to eat it or do anything with it because that's dangerous. It's not dangerous. The third world eats clay all the time, so using this as like when you have stomach ache and things like that. Actually, they started putting labels on the clay that you couldn't eat it in France because the biggest Pepto-Bismol type of company that was making their products used a lot of clay in their product, and they didn't want people to figure out you could do some of this manually. So anyway, that's another powerful one, along with the active carb charcoal, like just plain that, nothing else in it, active charcoal, but don't add it with all these things that they put in together to sell you something at more expensively. But and then maybe a herbal gem, which I think of as like the drops, like it's gemotherapy. It's these they're like plant tinctures, but they use the hormones of the buds. These are very powerful. It's like European pharmacopoeia, and you can order them online under the brand Herbal Gem. But they are amazing for a lot of different things, and they help target sites in the body, the kidneys, the organs, eyes, hair, teeth. They have a bunch of different functions, and a lot of those functions are endocrinological, meaning they're touching into the endocrine system, informational, like almost like homeopathy, and that's allowing for the system to heal over time. They take about 2 to 3 months to complete any given application. Like I had a friend he was using it for acne. I know other people use it for digestive problems and other for the flora. So there's a lot of things you can do with this one company, and you can just look things up on your own. You become your own therapist. What do you call it? Therapist? No, I think you say in English. You say, I wanted to say therapeute, but that doesn't work in English. In French, that means a therapeutic person, therapeutic. I don't know how you say that here, but it's someone who's working with therapies, not like we always think of therapy like analytical therapy and stuff, and this is more like bringing therapeutics to people's understanding, so they don't have to take synthesized medicine and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, come check us out at theheartoftradition.com for the magnesium part of all this, and don't get the fake stuff, do it right. And for the rest, find it, and because these 4 or 5 ideas can be very strong. If you can find a good raw milk and where you're from, I mean, California has really bad raw milk unless you get stuff from the north of California. We're in like a goiter belt here, which is a low iodine region in the central coast, and this is not where good milk comes from. Not only that, but the climate, you need a little bit colder climate for good milk, fatty milk and cream and stuff. So you want to get, you can order from Pennsylvania, you can order from Amish farms. There's other ways to do it. But anyway, those items, you can build health with that, everything that I've mentioned today. So come check us out for the magnesium part at theheartoftradition.com.